Hello everyone, happy Sunday, and that means it's time for another video. Today's video, I'm going to demonstrate a pretty common use case or a pretty common request that I get from a lot of my clients. It's in fact when you have, especially if they are coaches and consultants, and if they've scheduled meetings with their clients and last minute their client cancels on them, and that means they are not able to offer that slot to someone else, and it's slightly rude to charge your client for a canceled meeting. So this is a conundrum, and one of the ways to solve it is to send them a reminder one day before the meeting, especially if the meeting is scheduled a while ago or a week ago. So it's good to kind of tell them, hey, we have this meeting coming up for tomorrow. Please, let me know if there's any change of plans. So a lot of my clients would actually have their personal assistants look at their calendar and send out this email manually exactly 24 hours or approximately one day before their actual meeting time. So some of the clients say, hey, can we automate it? And yes, we could. Now, I suggested you could use Calendly. It has built-in reminder options, or you could use Microsoft Bookings, where you could have all these built-in reminder options without actually having to, even pay a separate subscription fee. Now, the limitation with Calendly or Bookings is that, you have a certain title defined for your meeting. So it's always going to uh, have the same meeting subject. So you kind of lack the flexibility there in Calendly and Bookings to really call the meeting what it should be called. So, what are our other solutions? Yes, we could use Power Automate to kind of automate this whole thing to be applicable for any meeting, irrespective of the subject line. And the way we would do this in Power Automate, where I'll demonstrate it step by step shortly, is using an action or a trigger in Power Automate in an Outlook trigger, which is when there is an upcoming event. That's the trigger that we use. One of the limitations with that trigger is that, say, if you have the trigger to say that when there is a meeting which is upcoming in less than 24 hours, it would look for any meeting that's going to be starting in less than 24 hours. So it means if you just schedule a meeting for an hour later from now, it would still trigger that reminder notification, which kind of becomes funny because you're sending two emails, the reminder as well as the actual invitation in within a short span of time, which isn't ideal. So how do we solve for that, etc. So the ideal or the easy solution is to use Microsoft Bookings and use the inbuilt reminder option. But in today's video, we are going to discuss the scenario where we would actually use Power Automate to accomplish this for a regular meeting just scheduled in Teams or Outlook instead of using any specialized, calendaring or scheduling applications such as Bookings or Calendly. So how we do this and how do we also overcome some of the limitations that we sort of discussed in terms of when that meeting is scheduled. So we'll discuss them today. So let me go ahead now to share my screen, and I'm on the Office homepage. And let me go to Power Automate. It's loading. I think Power Automate is also trying to enjoy its Sunday. Okay. So I would now go to create a new flow and we'll use automated cloud flow. This is meeting reminders, and here my flows trigger is if I just search for upcoming event. So there's when an upcoming event is starting soon, and we want to always use the latest version. So there's a V2 of it. If you hover over it, you see the full description, and this is V3. So we'll use version 3 and create the flow. So which calendar? So it could be I could also look up any other colleague's calendar which I have edit rights will show up here. So it shows my own calendar. It shows the birthdays and US holidays calendar. But this is my own calendar, and it says calendar. And it also shows one of my colleagues' calendars to whom I have edit rights. So I'll go ahead and select my own calendar, or I can select, if I want this to be based on my colleague's calendar, I can even select that. Now, this function works very well. Say, if I am an assistant, then I have rights over my boss's calendar, then I can send emails on behalf of my boss as an assistant, completely automated by looking up the functions here. So let's try that, right? I'm going to go ahead and select, assume I'm the virtual assistant or the personal assistant, and this happens to be my boss. All right, so we've selected another colleague's calendar here as the calendar ID where to look for the upcoming event. And under show advanced options, it says look ahead time. Now this is in minutes, right? So if I hover over it, it says time in minutes to look ahead for upcoming events. So say if I want to send the reminder 24 hours before our meeting. So I will say 1440, that's 24 into 60 minutes, 24 hours in a day. So it's 1440 minutes. Now let me say, I can use the send email action of Office 365. I'm using send an email v2, and the to address, I can click on add dynamic content here, and I would say required attendees. So people who are part of this event should get that, email. Or I'll also add optional attendees, and organizer is doesn't need to receive that email. But if I also want my colleague to be part of that notification, I can also select organizer. Notice how the dynamic content automatically filters only the line items that is relevant to the to field. Now, subject could be the actual events subject, right? So we will pretty much use the subject of the event itself. Um, and um, we can say of reminder, or we can say pre-meeting, or we can say if meeting you have, or we can really customize this to whatever you want. Let me just make it simple. Meeting reminder, we'll just call it upcoming meeting reminder. Meeting reminder, and then the actual meeting subject coming up. Let's have a space. Coming up in 24 hours, right? In the body of the email, I can say, hello everyone, or we'll just leave it at hello. And here we can say, this is to remind you of your upcoming meeting with Rizwana tomorrow, because we are sending this 24 hours ahead. And I'll say regards, Sahil, personal assistant to Rizvana, or something like that, if you wish. Or you could just say, if you're doing this for yourself, you can say of your upcoming meeting with me tomorrow, right? So that's also possible. So now let me just say with Rizvana tomorrow, and this is all ready. And that's all you need. And once you save it, any meeting that you schedule that has been scheduled by this colleague 24 hours before the meeting, the customer or whoever is an attendee or a required attendee in that meeting will automatically receive this particular email, and it will be sent from me. And if I also have send as access, I can still say with me, but I can just change the from to Rizwana as well, because but if I want to send with me, then by default, because it's my login, it will consider me as the sender. So, I can just select myself here as the send as, but not required. So, yeah, so this is all set to go. Now, this is where it kind of then starts to become just slightly complex. If the customer says, hey, I only want certain meetings to be eligible for this. So say I have a private appointment and things like that, and something that I just schedule in my calendar for my own reference. I don't want this flow to be triggered. So you see already, I'm already starting to get some of the meetings that are there on the calendar. So that the flow is already working, and it started to look for events that are upcoming in 24 hours, and it started sending things, and some of them are just placeholders, etc. So I don't want that. So now what I do is I can then add an action here, and we can add a condition control, and I will say subject contains the word with, or any word for which I would want this flow to trigger. I don't want this to be sent for every meeting. Only if the meeting contains with, I want this flow to trigger. Otherwise, I don't want this flow to trigger. So now I can go ahead and click save. And this means only if the meeting subject contains that particular word, the reminders will be triggered. Otherwise, they will not be triggered. A small problem now with this flow is that it I have actually used the word here that it is tomorrow because of this time. But what this flow would do is it will trigger when it has reached the 24 hours, but it will also trigger this flow as long as it's less than 1440 minutes. So if I schedule a meeting to have to happen in the next 1 or 2 hours, it will still send an email reminder and it will say tomorrow. Then we have two options. One is we say we still need the reminder, but if it's scheduled only now, then we need to send a different sort of reminder. Otherwise, um, it needs to say tomorrow. So let's say if anything is sent at least 18 hours before, then we are happy for it to be tomorrow, because usually it will cut over to the next day. So I want a condition if it's less than 1080 minutes, then I want that to be saying tomorrow. If not, I don't want the reminder to be sent, or I can have another email drafted which will replace this tomorrow word to something else. But yeah, let's how do we do that? Now, one of the things here is we'll have to use a compose action for this. And so there's a function called ticks, right? In expressions, there is a function called ticks. So ticks is a very small unit of time. It's like nanoseconds or something like that. So if I go to ticks and I say start time of the event, right? So it's ticks of the start time of the event versus the time when the trigger is actually triggered, which is denoted by UTC now. So I will then, and then I have to subtract the two. So I have to subtract the meeting start time from the time now. So let's say, and I have to use a subtraction function. So I'm going to subtract the current time with the actual time of the meeting start. So now this is subtracting it. So now if I save this, so let me try to rerun a flow on one of the items that just ran. Now, if I see here, you see that there's a huge sort of number that comes up. That's because the ticks is like a really small value. And because our conditions and the lookup time is using minutes, then we need to convert that. So let's just go ahead and look up the conversion ticks to minutes. So now you can see this is the numbers for conversion. So we want it in minutes, so we can copy this number converting ticks. And you can see like, 1 seconds is equal to some 10 million ticks, as you can see here. Yeah, 10 million ticks. So then, to convert it, this is in minutes. So you have to, it's 60 million. So copy that, and now if I have to edit this, now we'll have to enclose the subtracted value into a division function, and this whole expression goes in, and right, so this whole thing goes in, and yes, all the way in, and then you have this number that we copied, and we update, save. And now if we test it again, let's see if we receive that in minutes. So now if I go in here, I see it in minutes, 1260 minutes. So now I can go in and I can add another condition here, and I can say output of that compose action is less than or is greater than, and I say 1080 minutes for 18 hours, but sometimes the flow can take about 5 minutes to run. So 1075 minutes. So which means this flow will only run if the subject contains width, as well as the, as long as the meeting is at least 18 hours away. Otherwise, this will not run. And then we'll click on save. So this flow is now perfected, so as to not send meeting reminders for meetings that have been scheduled last minute, because we want the meeting reminders to only be sent for meetings which have been scheduled at least 18 hours ahead of time. Yes, and or if you just want it to be like, proper 20, only the meetings scheduled far back and not to send for anything which is less than, um, you know, uh, less than 24 hours away, then you can just make this number 1440, but give 5 minutes for the flow to run and it'll be 1435, or just make it 1400, right? So now if I click on save, and that's it. Now we have a flow which will send meeting reminders and replaces some of the workload of what a personal assistant would do. And this process is going to be completely automated. And it's also, you can also control with a keyword which meetings become eligible for these reminders, and you can make sure to include that keyword in your flow if you really want to filter down the meetings for which this flow gets triggered. And as well as you could add this function to avoid meeting schedule last minute from receiving these reminders. That's the flow for today, and watching, and you all have a fantastic day. Bye bye.